You know, building a nation's education system isn't something that happens overnight. It's really more like a century-long debate. So to really get to the heart of modern Indian education, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to follow the story of a young man named Chandran on a journey through well, let's call it a forest of ideas, where each path represents a key moment in pre-independence India.
So, let's meet our protagonist. His name is Chandran, and he comes from a quiet little village.
But Chandran isn't just anyone. He's driven by this one single, incredibly powerful belief that's about to send him on the adventure of a lifetime.
And what's that belief? It's simple, but at the time, totally revolutionary. That education is the fundamental job of a government. This one single idea is the engine that's going to drive our entire story.
Okay, so here's where the journey really kicks off. The local king gives Chandran a scroll with a grant for 1 lakh rupees to improve education. Sounds great, right? Well, it immediately sparks this huge argument between the traditionalists and the modernists. And this is what sends Chandran into that forest of ideas to figure out the right way forward. And almost the second he steps into that forest, he comes across a brand new path. A path that, honestly, would change absolutely everything. The introduction of a completely foreign system of learning. The first character he meets is, well, it's a deer, a peculiar deer named Maan. Now, Maan isn't just any deer. He represents a pivotal moment in history. From 1835, Lord Macaulay's famous Minute on Indian Education.
So Macaulay's big argument is this: the future is all about English and Western sciences. And what was the goal? It was to create a whole new class of Indians, educated in the English tradition, who could act as a bridge, as intermediaries. For Chandran, this was the first huge fork in the road.
All right, so Macaulay's Minute kind of set the direction for what to teach. But the next, and maybe even bigger question, was how do you actually build the system? This is where Chandran starts to see the real blueprint begin to take shape. As he ventures deeper into the woods, Chandran stumbles upon this giant, wise old tree named Maram. This tree is symbolic of another massive moment, a foundational document from 1854 called Sir Charles Wood's Despatch.
And this tree, Maram, declares something pretty bold. It says, "I am the Magna Carta of education." And why would it say that? Well, because it laid out the very first comprehensive plan for a structured education system from the ground up, from primary school all the way to university.
This blueprint was a game changer. It called for establishing universities, creating proper teacher training programs, and giving grants to help schools out. In fact, from its very branches, India's first 3 modern universities grew: Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras.
Then all of a sudden, a hunter named Vedan leaps out onto the path. But here's the thing, his target isn't animals, it's ignorance. Vedan represents the Hunter Commission of 1882, which was basically set up to check on the progress since Wood's Dispatch. The Hunter Commission was all about strengthening the foundation of the pyramid. So Vedan's mission was to improve primary and secondary schools, really push for female education, and hand over school management to local groups. This dramatically expanded the whole system's reach.
Now, you know what happens when something grows that fast, right? You start to need some oversight. So the next part of Chandran's journey marks a big shift from just expanding the system to a period of review, regulation, and a lot more government control.
And here, Chandran meets a duo that really represents a 1-2 punch of reform. First, there's Udayan, the inspector. He stands for the 1902 Universities Commission. His job was just to investigate. But right on his heels is the very strict Admin Aya, who symbolizes the 1904 Universities Act. And he wasn't just looking, he was imposing much stricter government control. It was a clear shift from investigation to regulation.
Next, Chandran runs into Sadhana, who represents the Sadler Commission of 1917. She introduced a major structural overhaul, things like separating high school from university education, creating that intermediate +2 system that we're all familiar with, and of course, improving teacher training. Now the journey takes a really fascinating turn. The structure is mostly built, so the debate shifts from how to educate to the very philosophy and quality of education itself, the why of it all. So, Chandran meets his final 2 mentors. On one side, you have Hartogi, who represents the 1929 Hartog Committee. He was focused on a very practical problem. Kids were dropping out of school like crazy. His solution was to consolidate and improve quality. But on the other side, you have Vadhaa Guru, representing Gandhi's 1937 Warda scheme. He proposed something completely radical: free, compulsory education that was centered around a practical craft, connecting learning directly to life. At this point, after meeting all these guides and hearing all these different ideas, Chandran finally reaches the end of his path. And it's here that he has this profound realization, a real aha moment about what his journey was really all about.
And here's the secret. The forest wasn't just a forest. The path he was walking, the characters he was meeting, they weren't random at all. They were a living, breathing timeline of India's educational history.
Every single character was a historical milestone. Mahatrayan, the deer, that was Macaulay's Minute in 1835, setting the language of instruction. Maram, the giant tree, that was Wood's Despatch in 1854, creating the entire structure. Vedan, the hunter, was the Hunter Commission of 1882, focused on expansion. Admanaya, that was the 1904 Universities Act, which brought in government control. Sadhana was the 1917 Sadler Commission, restructuring the whole system. And finally, Vadhaa Guru was Gandhi's 1937 War the Scheme, which questioned the very philosophy of it all.
And this brings us right back to Chandran's quest. That long journey through the forest laid the entire foundation for the system we have today. But it leaves us with a critical question, one that is just as relevant now as it was then. After all these reforms and all these debates, have we actually found the true purpose of education? What do you think?